All right. Okay. So, welcome everybody on behalf of the Digital Humanism Initiative and the Bavarian Research Institute for Digital Transformation, BIDD. A warm welcome from my side to this first edition in our new format, Polis Digitalis Ensuring a Democratic Digital Space. What we want to do in this series is we want to bring together policymakers, journalists, and academics in order to discuss the most recent actual developments of policy decisions for the digital sphere and also raise awareness in civil society for that. I'm happy that for today's first discussion, we could engage two renowned personalities. Let me just briefly introduce our interviewer, who will then introduce our main guest. So as interviewer, we are very happy to welcome Janis Brühl, one of Germany's leading digital journalists. He has been reporting for the Süddeutsche Zeitung on big tech for more than 10 years, focusing on disruptions from Silicon Valley and their impact on society. Let me just add that he just published a new book, so far only published in Germany, if I'm not mistaken, Disruption. Now I say das German title, die Ideologie der Tech-Oligarchen und das Ende der Demokratie, wie wir sie kennen. My translation, the ideology of the tech oligarchs and the end of democracy as we know it, but this we don't want to have. So I hand over to Janis to see what our guest can say about this. Thank you very much. And thanks for joining.
Yes, thank you, Stefan Boltran. And hello, everyone across the cyberspace. I guess everyone is properly updated now. So we can start and talk and start our discussion about the strange, intense times that we are living in. And I like to welcome my guest that I'm talking to today. He's an MEP, and he is Brando Benifei from the Progressive Alliance of Socialists and Democrats. He is, among other things, on the Committee on International Trade and on Constitutional Affairs, and he's the chair of the EP delegation for relations with the United States. So I'm talking to someone who is right in the middle of this mess that we call, or used to call, the transatlantic relations. I don't know what we're going to call them now. Maybe we'll find out. So, Mr. Benefei, my first question to you is about your subjective experiences. How does it feel to be under this new form of pressure from the United States?
First of all, thank you very much. Thank you for this opportunity. Well, I could talk about various angles of this story, but probably because of the interest of the audience present, I will focus on the digital angle. In fact, as some of you know, I've been the rapporteur for the AI Act of the European Union, and now I'm chairing the working group for the implementation of the AI Act. And this is, in fact, intertwining with the work on trade and the work on the relations with the United States that you mentioned. Because we see, in fact, more and more a geopolitical pressure around the value chains that underpin the AI development, because without the semiconductors industry, there is no AI. And so this is a matter that intertwines various dimensions, including the purely trade aspects. In fact, on this topic, for example, it's very interesting and important that the EU has concluded recently, although it will take time to be fully operational, but it's a very clear political choice to open to have an agreement and open the markets with India to actually build with India some cooperation on this specific matter. And this is the same if we will complete the Mercosur work and for possible other agreements that are under discussion. But then with the US, we have seen forms of pressure. In fact, we are discussing if this is blackmailing or illegitimate pressure. There is a discussion in the European institutions about using certain instruments to react to this. And I can tell you that personally, I think it's absurd that in front of the choice to ban people that were guilty in the decision of the Department of State of the US of having dealt with digital legislation that was not liked, and I'm referring to Breton and other European and UK citizens that were banned from entering the US. In front of this, there was no reaction. In the end, it was only a condemnation verbally, but nothing really happened. And on the digital issues, I can tell you that even just a week ago, when I met with the US ambassador, I can tell because it was a public meeting. In this case, he insisted that we need to change the Digital Services Act, the DMA, and that in a way that I think is even offensive, even in the way it's done, because we are not telling US Congress or US President to change laws in this way. So this is where we are. And I personally also got a lot of pressure around the AI Act when I had the chance to discuss with some members of the US administration or with think tanks that are closely aligned and very influential with the administration itself. Why the AI Act is less at the center of the public debate? It's all DSA and a little DMA and almost no AI Act. Mm-hmm. There is a reason for that I think it's often forgot. It's the reason that the AI Act is mostly still in the process of starting to be implemented. The only part of the AI Act that is fully in place is the prohibitions. So the prohibited use cases based on Article 5 of the AI Act are already applicable. So today we already have certain use cases of AI that are prohibited in Europe. And you can't sell or use those systems for those users in Europe. But apart from that, and I conclude my point, apart from that, the AI Act is just a work in progress. And so there is less public aggression that in the case of the DSA is targeted at trying to reduce the willingness to enforce the legislation, knowing that it will not be changed. They know it, even though they say it, that there will be no reopening. But in the case of AI Act, is more subtle. There is less public affirmations, but there is a lot of work behind the scenes to try to push for delaying more, not applying with a lot of limitations, the way the AI Act is being conceived. Because now we are still in a different phase. I wanted to clarify that, and just to say that on all these issues with different approaches, as I tried to say, there is pressure from US side to actually abandon the digital legislation.
I think since you mentioned the two laws, DSA and AI Act, it always makes me think of the two conferences a year ago. One was the Munich Security Conference, which is now exactly a year ago when Vance targeted the DSA under the slogan of freedom of speech, and then the Paris AI conference. Now, it looks a bit like the Americans have identified from their point of view, the digital laws as the weak link in Europe, which they can easily defeat because the Commission is so focused on trade. Do you think the Commission is willing or might in the end sacrifice the digital laws to get better trade deals?
So I don't agree very much with your analysis, although it could have been agreeable in a different moment. What do I mean? At the beginning of this story, so at the beginning of the new administration, what you just said, I could subscribe to. But I think that the things have changed in time, because we have seen how easily the Commission has been pushing and found a political climate that was in that direction, both in Parliament and in the Council, to change the environmental legislation. So all the sustainability legislation was actually reduced in ambition significantly in this first year of Trump administration. And this was in the explicit target of the administration. If you read the agreement that we signed after the Turnberry meeting in Scotland, because nothing was signed at that time. It was a political agreement in principle. Then a few weeks later, I think 26th of August, I don't remember the exact date in August, but last days of August, there was the signing of a memorandum that is the basis for this ongoing application of the trade deal. In the memorandum, there is a clear chapter, it's the last part, you can read it easily, that refers to the obligations to increase the investments in US, which is, to be frank, a very fake thing, because it refers to obligations from the private sector. There is nothing from the public money. Important to underline, because it's not the same with other partners. In fact, Japan, for example, has committed to public investment with the US. The EU didn't commit to that, but there is also an extensive part on reducing the burden on the environmental legislation, sustainability legislation, CSDDD, CSDP, this legislation on sustainability, social, but especially environmental, that has been in fact slashed. While on the digital, even the memorandum is very vague and only mentions generically more alignment on cybersecurity, but no mention of DSA, DMA, etc. And this could be seen as a pause by the Commission. The Commission has played this game at the beginning, saying, we want for the competitiveness to slash legislation, and it has been hard on the environmental part. But on the digital, they said many times, we will not let others dictate the legislation. My opinion is that at the beginning of this story, the beginning of the relations with the new administration, the Commission was saying this, but not really convinced of doing it. Now the situation has changed. I think that the repeated attacks by techno leaders, first of all, Elon Musk, the tentatives to interfere in elections with a clear indication also in the national security strategy of the willingness to support extreme right parties very explicitly without any hiding of it, has created a different climate. So in fact, today, the discussion on the omnibuses, so to in fact review some of the legislation, is now weighted by this political context where there is more wariness and more prudence to actually remove the protections of the DSA, the AI Act, etc.
So you don't think, just if I may ask the question, you don't think that the European Union on its own would use the omnibus to scale back regulation?
I want to get to that, to say that in my view, there is one area where the EU is doing it, I would say, not because of the pressure. which is the data part. So on data, my conviction is that if you put together the Draghi report and the pressure coming from digital businesses, the data part, so reviewing GDPR, Data Act, etc., is the issue that I would say has a life on its own, because it comes from different issues put on the table to the Commission by member states, by businesses from Europe, by I mean, it was so funny, sorry, to read at some point for me that I was negotiating the AI Act in the past years, a letter by the biggest European companies, industrial companies, saying that they were against the AI Act. But then if you read what were the issues that they said it was their problem, they were not in the AI Act. They were mostly GDPR. So I'm not even saying if they're right, they're wrong. I mean, I think they might be right in something and wrong in other things. But this is another discussion. Might need a specific time for that, because we are starting to look into this data omnibus. That is one of the two. There is an AI omnibus and the data omnibus. The AI omnibus is small. The proposals to change the AI Act are very limited. The main thing is the delaying of the entry into force of the high risk part of the AI Act. The other modifications are small. Now we will discuss. Some of them are unacceptable in my view. Some are useful. The data act, the data omnibus, is much bigger, much more impactful, and in my view, it's having a reasoning on its own outside the pressure from the US. But in general, my point is the pressure from US on these issues is less effective, because the situation has changed a bit in terms of how the EU thinks it should maintain some of these digital rules. It's a totally different thing with the environmental laws, where the scaling back has been for political reasons in Europe, but also for a successful lobbying from the US.
It sounds a little bit like the Americans have lost the upper hand, and that the EU has got more self-confident. Now, you mentioned Elon Musk. How do you see the lobbying or the alliance between what I call the tech oligarchs and their companies and the US government? How does that play out in the transatlantic relations? Can you give us a bit more of an insight there?
Well, I think it's creating an understanding inside our societies that this approach is something that contravenes all the behaviors we are expecting from the US, that we do not expect them to act in a way that seems like protecting in a very partisan way not a broader interest of US economy, but rather very special interests that are linked to certain figures that have been important in financing campaigns, that are important in supporting the ruling power. To be honest, this sounds a bit Chinese than American, and this is the perception that we are having. I went to Silicon Valley recently, and I went back thinking, but if everyone now does everything based on a governmental indication, and there is not even the activity of the courts is in fact in the digital area, it's linked to two different dynamics. Either there needs to be actions by companies that do not act because they fear that if they win a case against the administration, then they will lose in the later stage, because they win one thing and then they will be blacklisted for everything. So they lose possibility to work if they actually win in court against the state. So they renounce to do it. And there are the decisions that are taken considering the political interests of the administration. This sounds very Chinese to me.
And can you tell us a little bit more, since you're so deep into AI and AI regulation, what role does AI play in the American strategy, and against that in the European strategy? How does that play out? Because it is this hype technology that now, especially in the US, seems to be part of the foreign policy almost, with Musk and Sam Altman traveling to the Gulf states to close deals with Donald Trump.
Well, my opinion is that it's difficult to understand where are the boundaries between ideological approaches, electoral interests, economic interests. When we look at the AI strategy, we can say the AI approach, because there is this rhetoric of the arms race that is very strong everywhere in US.
Against China.
Exactly. That AI is an arms race against China. And I doubt this has only a political dimension. I think there are a lot of interests behind, and it's part of the strategy of trying to project an image of greatness of US. My opinion, for example, obviously it's a disputable opinion, that the Venezuela invasion in the short term has mostly an internal affairs reason, very limited on the oil or on other geopolitical considerations, maybe a bit scaring Iran and Russia and China, but mainly internal towards the midterms. But this is my opinion. And in general, I think we can also see this Make America Great Again messaging behind also the arms race on AI. But there are the interests of people close to the administration. There are, and so you see that there are decisions that are quite harsh, like, again, we have on the table now the moratorium for any AI legislation in the states. So I've been working myself with some states of the United States that have been trying to do their own AI Act. And now there is the push to actually have again the moratorium. It's a fight inside the MAGA movement. I can tell you, I met some of the more ultra-conservatives, MAGA senators, and they are in favor of AI regulation because there is a split. There is a part that is religiously motivated, that is normally very pro-regulation. Mm-hmm. And there is a part that is aligned with the tech bros, if I may use this summarizing expression, that are fighting to have no limitations. And in fact, a political approach that is devoted to put all the resources in the arms race. Mm-hmm. So this is a power fight inside those that are now governing the US.
That's the religious people are very much estranged, I think, when they hear Sam Altman talking about superintelligence, because it reminds them of
they are also
building a god.
About children. A very important entry point to discuss with the Americans is children. They have big difficulty in justifying with the free speech rhetoric that, in my opinion, is often only a way to cover business interests, to use it when we talk about pedopornography. I find them in big difficulty when I sit in one of those meetings of at least two very relevant think tanks for the US administration, and they tell me that I'm trying to destroy free speech with the rules of the AI Act. And I make the example of the guardrails we have put towards the generation of this kind of content, and they are in difficulty. They are in difficulty because Also, the First Lady of the United States has been engaged into this. I'm not sure now Trump is very happy that she did it, but she has been doing it. So now they cannot contradict what has been started, this campaign to actually protect children from online risks. And so this is a very important entry point to actually break the blockage on this topic.
And this was something that was quite obvious when Elon Musk was very much always talking about freedom of speech, and he had the scandal with Grok going on, generating these images also of children, like sexualized images. Since you were talking about freedom of speech, one question that is also very much, for example, in Germany, gaining traction in the debate is the censorship, the so-called censorship. Do you think there is anything that could have been done better from a regulatory point of view, or from communicating it in the DSA or these kinds of laws? Because after all, they are laws for communication. And so is there anything that you think was strategically unwise, or could have been done better, or can be done better in the future?
So my opinion on the legislation, including the AI Act, is that the communication around them has been terrible, probably the worst possible, because they have been presented as I don't know, like technical bureaucratic things, and instead they are very political, because they have a value, an idea of values and then the in front of very political objections, like the ones on the free speech and the explanations, I think that we have been seeing, and the way that the presentation of this legislation is too much technical to reach people. It has to be more value driven and example I mean, driven in terms of having more clarity to reach out to people. I think there was an underestimation of the violence of the debate that would emerge when you try to curtail the freedom of these kind of beasts. I think there was a big underestimation, maybe because before the strategy was different. It was until we are not regulated, we try to look good. But then when there are rules, we become monsters. We say that EU is the land of censorship, etc. The same people that before they said the opposite, that EU was a good place to do business, to work together, and it's all about economic interests. And I think that there should have been a totally different way of dealing with this. And sorry, but the Commission has got even worse when they presented the omnibuses, because first of all, they are totally incomprehensible, and they clearly look very ragtag, patchy work, not done in a very orderly way. It seems like a reaction to something that happened, which probably is, but also they give a wrong message, that the way they have been presented, it's not like we are the first ones to do the good things that everyone now is copying, apart from the Americans. And so, as we are the first ones, now we need to look at some issues that need to be done better, because we tried first, we have to adjust some parts that are not working fine or are not going to work fine. We reflected, because we are the first ones, we are the best ones in this. So we are the first ones to actually have to look at it. It has been the opposite. It has been like, oh, I don't know, we have done everything bad, so now we have to change. It's ridiculous, because it created an expectation to business, to that we would change radically our legislation, which is not happening, at least on the AI Act, for example. The AI Act is not going to change. I can tell you, I see how the discussion is going also in the parliament. We started it already, but I see also in the council. Maybe the council, some governments will try to unravel a bit more AI Act, but I don't think they will succeed. And in Parliament, I told you the climate is we have Musk that wants AFD to gain the chancellorship. This is the underlying thing. So why should we destroy our digital legislation? The climate has changed completely since the beginning of this mandate, and the omnibuses. So in the end, I told you maybe on the data is a bit different, but for the rest, they are a limited exercise. And so you see these businesses that send us letters saying, "Oh, this omnibus, okay, it's okay, but there is nothing. We want more. We expected to see a total cut of the legislation." I see it in the way they write us. They were surprised by the lack of more deregulation. This is the point. There was big deregulation, I would say, especially reduction of scope of the environmental legislation. Then this digital omnibus is much more less ambitious, and I think that many in the business were not expecting that.
Mm-hmm. And
they are disappointed.
Yes. And so on the other side, or on one side, we have businesses, and maybe on the other side, we have civil society and academics like DICOM. What would you say? How helpful have they been, and what can they do more to help you?
I want to be clear. I think we need to talk with everyone. When I work on the AI Act, we needed to talk with the businesses that develop AI of all kinds, small, scaling, big tech, with everyone. But most of them, especially the bigger ones, to be honest, not the startups, they just don't want any regulation. So you need to know that many of them, they are not saying the truth when they say we are happy if there is regulation. We know we need the regulation. It's not true, and so they do a lot of aggressive lobbying to not have the laws, and when they are there, to make them not applied. You will see it on the copyright on AI Act, how much they will lobby to not apply the rules on copyright, because they know they are there, but they will try to push for a very mild application because it touches a lot of their economic interest to start to have to pay the creators of the materials that have been used to train the algorithms, because this is what we are talking about. On the other hand, the civil society, the organizations on the ground that have a different kind of constituency than a business of the kinds I was mentioning, they have been very helpful to signal certain issues when we worked on this legislation, to actually give us useful thoughts. But obviously, again, also for them, we need to be realistic about what we can get, because if you listen to them, they live in a world where there are no politics, where they think we should do what is the best to, for example, protect human rights. Maybe in abstract, I agree, but sometimes we had even to make compromises, even on the AI Act, that generally is a very progressive legislation, just for coincidences, to be frank, because the Spanish presidency was negotiating for the other member states. If we had another presidency leading from the governments, it would have been different. In the parliament, the members from the more conservative groups that were negotiating were more progressive than the average of their own groups. So it's really a lot of coincidences that then end up making the law in a certain way. But in general, I mean, the civil society is never happy, because they I mean, it's also their role sometimes to reason in absolutes of values, while politics means also to find practical compromises between different interests on the table, including the big tech companies, because in the end we need them to be part of the process. We need to know that they normally spend all the time telling us what the smaller companies will be suffering from certain choices. But then I get this from them and not from these smaller companies. And this sometimes is puzzling. No, I told them in some occasions, so sorry, I will not mention the company. It happened even recently. I told them, but so you are telling me that you are asking me to not to change the things in this way in the omnibuses because of companies that are your competitors that want to become the incumbent to substitute you. This is what you are telling me. So they laugh and they change the subject. But this has been a rhetorical exercise for long. If I may, I refer to this because it's typical that the bigger companies in this field of the discussions, they tell you things that they say it's not for us, it's for the startups. But to be frank, this is not very credible often.
Okay. Thank you very much for now for these insights, also in these insights into the lobbying. And now I think we have time for some more questions, and I would hand this back for now to Stefan Woltran for the questions.
All right, so I think we have time for questions, so we can. There is one hand by Hannes Wertner, our initiator.
So first of all, thanks for this very good discussion and explanation. I have one question. How does it change if you take China into this overall geopolitical equation? Where is China different and in this global competition?
Well, China is a crucial actor in the sense that they are developing digital capabilities, and they own certain choke points of the AI value chain that make them very relevant. I think that we need to show the US that we are willing to work also with China, which is obviously delicate, but my opinion is that US, if we want US to be more reasonable, which I think is important for us, we need to show them that EU is able to diversify. It's already doing it with India, with Mercosur, but I think China also must be part of a dialogue. In fact, I make a guess. I will be in a week in India for the India Impact Summit, the successor of the Paris summit that was mentioned at the beginning of this conversation. I'm sure that even if India is hostile to China, there will be a lot of China there because it's an international conference. And to be frank, in Paris, China was everywhere. And they were already saying in all the places, people from organizations that were clearly linked to the Chinese government, others were more like private endeavors. They were already trying to say, well, we are willing to deal with AI safety. If the US don't want to cooperate globally, we are willing to do that. So they are already trying to occupy, like it happens with other issues that we could discuss about US. For example, the abandonment by US of a certain part of their international cooperation effort. So the reduction of the US aid is a space that is being occupied by China, but also the abandonment of the World Health Organization. In the digital field, this is the fact that the US has been retracting from, for example, global initiatives on AI safety. And I think that this is a space that China is trying to occupy more and more, and we will see where it will lead.
Okay. I see two more hands, if this is okay for you, Mr. Benefei. I would maybe ask Carlo Getze and George Metakidis for their questions and ask them to be quick, and then you can, so to say, in also concern with respect to your time budget, reply to both questions. Carlo and George, please be.
Okay. Thank you very much for the very interesting discussion. And you touched quite a lot the area of digital laws in Europe. But there's the other side of the coin, which is how to reach digital sovereignty in Europe. So my question is, what is the roadmap? Is there a roadmap in Europe to gain, to progress in digital sovereignty, and which directions, which priorities? I mean, if you can give, some ideas about this. Thank you.
Sorry,
George?
just a second, because I have a problem with the plenary. Just a moment, sorry.
No worries.
Sorry, because we are in the middle of the plenary. I'm sorry. So can you repeat your question? Sorry very much.
No, my question was about digital sovereignty. What is the roadmap that is in place, if there is one, priorities and things like that?
So, to be frank, this is a topic where we have seen the Digital Sovereignty Summit between France and Germany, and there is a lot of discussion. But my opinion is we still have not seen the political will to actually take the steps that are necessary. We all identify the issues. You know that we have a leaders retreat in a few days, where also Draghi and Letta will be there with their reports. They all talk about this. I am very skeptical and very pessimistic. My opinion is that our leaders are not ready to do this. They are spending a lot of words, but when they have to take decisions, they hide behind the fact that public opinions are distracted. They don't understand really what we are talking about. And in the end, they don't take the decisions. And they blame something else. But in the end, there is no pooling of resources. There is no decision to really stimulate, for example, more European cloud infrastructure, or to strengthen for real common European initiatives on AI that the European Commission is doing, but it's limited in the amounts of its budgets and its powers. The governments are very far from actually taking seriously this agenda. And it's not me saying it, but you can simply listen to Draghi, who I think is very serious on this and very clear on the fact that we are already in an emergency from this perspective of the sovereignty of Europe, looking at think of what happened yesterday with Lagarde praying the member states to not abandon the digital euro, that we should advance, praying, crying. This was the report from the journalists, like a plea. But because she knows that even though the parliament, not easy even in the parliament, supports, the governments are breaking again on all of this. And I mentioned the digital euro because this is crucial to separate from payment circuits from the US to have an alternative. So I am pessimistic. I think we still need to see something happening for things to move. I want to be honest, because everything is on the table, but the things are not moving because the urgency is not felt enough. If I may make consider it a very hyperbolic joke, if we had the helicopters from US going to Greenland for real, maybe things would be different in this meeting. But there are no helicopters moving, so I think that the meeting of the next days will be totally useless. I'm very pessimistic. I had meetings today about that, and I think the premises that I see are not good. I hope I'm wrong.
Okay, thank you. Do you have time for one or two more questions?
Yeah, I can do just one. I'm sorry.
Okay, so then I think George was the next one, George Metakidis, and thank you.
Thank you. First of all, thank you for the discussion and thank you for the clear, consistent, and courageous positions that you have been taking in the European Parliament. My question concerns the member states, some of whom, as you indicated earlier, came out in support of the omnibus bill with some arguments that link back to the myth that any kind of regulation stifles innovation and so on. You must come across that often in your interlocution with the United States. So how do you deal with it?
We deal saying that the legislation is our decision. It's they should not interfere. This is at least what has been the mantra. But then you need to look also at the concrete decisions that are being taken. And I think some decisions that we have seen were influenced by this kind of rhetoric from the US. On the CERN for AI that I see in the chat, I support this project. And in fact, we are discussing this with many of the scientific community. But again, it was mentioned by von der Leyen, but then where is the political will? Because if you want to create something comparable to the CERN for AI research, you need something much more robust than the AI factories that the Commission has been able to push through and to propose. And I think the Commission is doing a good job, but in a context of limited actionability from the Commission level. The governments are mostly proceeding in fragmented way. I give you the example of France that is doing a lot, but it's doing it on its own. So I think that CERN for AI is a great idea, but it needs the endorsement of the leaders. Otherwise, we are not seeing it advance as a concrete project. I need to go now, but I thank you for this opportunity, and I hope we can stay in touch. And whoever wants to ask me other questions, you can send me an email, reach me. I'm easily reached with the social media or email or whatever. So thank you very much. And
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much for sharing your insights. Please keep fighting for our interests. It's good to see such people being around. And yeah, I think we can stay a bit more. Thank you again. A bit more in the chat, and also take the opportunity, since we have Janis Brühl here, and I think we have 10 minutes left for. I mean, on the one hand, maybe you want to reflect a bit on the interview. On the other hand, I would like to take up with the discussion at the very end about digital sovereignty and ask you also about, so to say, the current, the new government and their plans, because I mean, it seems a bit mixed from outside. There's Schleswig-Holstein, which is going in one direction, but on the other hand, there are several other federal states use Palantir or try to use. I mean, maybe you can tell us a little bit about the German situation and what.
Yes, thank you. Yes, for the first part of the question, reflecting on our discussion was very, very interesting, and it seems that Brando Benifei is kind of fighting two opponents. One is the United States, and then but there's also the member states. And now obviously everyone knows that the member states might sometimes be working against what makes sense on the European level, or what would make sense. But to hear it firsthand is always a bit sobering. And when it comes to digital sovereignty, it's interesting that there still doesn't seem to be the urge to change things among leaders. If we look at the fact that what I found the most spectacular examples from the last year, when we look at the International Criminal Court, and we have seen that the sanctioning of judges has directly led to Microsoft and Google and other American companies shutting these people out. Now, you may disagree on what the court has done, but it shows you the dependencies that we have, that the institutions the international institutions, but obviously also the European institutions have, and how easily individuals can actually be targeted. And I saw an open desk being mentioned in the chat. Now, obviously, this is something that's very, very interesting and promising, and I mentioned this in my book as well. These German ideas that are starting to be introduced now, but there are also big new Microsoft deals on the table for the German state administrations, but there are discussions about, there are fights about, but Germans are particular, obviously, because Germans have this very this stems from the last decades even, the German thinking about data protection, and this is why the American big companies have always been viewed with a bit of suspicion, but still the deals are in place and the new deals are being made. Also, as you mentioned with Palantir, I was myself here in Munich, not far from where I work, at the state police, and there's literally one room where the policemen sit, and they have two keyboards, and the keyboards, there are like stickers on the keyboards, and one is the regular keyboard and the other one is a Palantir keyboard to access the Palantir Gotham system. And in the next room, there are two very friendly young engineering guys, and they work for Palantir. These are the embedded technicians or engineers. So they're very, very close, literally very close to the German national security or German security people. So we have that discussion. It's open in Baden-Württemberg, which is the German state. There is a lot of trouble in the coalition because it's a coalition of the conservatives and the Greens, and the Greens don't like Palantir too much. But yes, this is the next, Peter Thiel, he believes in monopolies, and he's building up a monopoly with Palantir and wants to be the only company that delivers this stuff to the European governments and the European police, and of course the European military as well.
Yeah, I just look if there's a question from the audience to Janis Brühl, we could, I think, have one. Otherwise, I would have a final question. Also, maybe this is something you researched in your book, and also something which is mentioned now quite frequently, is this transition of people between politics and the big companies. There's a lot of things which without cooling down and so on and so forth. And these are. Can you report something on that?
Yeah, I think it's. I mean, on the United States side, and this is something new. Now, there's always been the revolving door discussion, or the fact that the revolving door was very much open to many sectors. Obviously, lots of American treasury secretaries have before worked in finance and worked in finance afterwards. So, but what is new now is the fusion of politics and big tech. Or yes, you can see this like in the discussion about Greenland. You can see that Ken Howery is the ambassador to Denmark. He is one of the original people at PayPal, where he was with Peter Thiel, with Elon Musk. Mark Andreessen has said that he was actually in Mar-a-Lago picking staff for government offices. He called himself an unpaid intern, which is something very nice to say for a billionaire who doesn't need to get paid for this. But he was making his influence. We know that Peter Thiel, according to New York Times, actually called Trump and recommended J.D. Vance as the vice president's pick. So this is something where and of course we have Doge, where Elon Musk was for a long time part of the government. And so we have this kind of fusion, and this is a transgression of the limits and the borders that we had before. But this is something where the disruptive tech mindset goes along very well with Trump's mindset, which is that rules and norms are there to be broken.
Now I see one hand by George. Maybe this is the final question. Also, I apologize for not, because we could not have all the questions from the chat and from the audience to Benefei. George.
Yeah, it's not a question, Stefan. It's just that this being the first, the first Polis Digitalis event, I think we could extend an invitation to the audience, because I saw a lot of people that do not attend the normal, let's say, the regular Digital Humanism lectures. If Walter could provide the address, and they can make suggestions for future events. What do they think would be useful to have in this new line of events for digital humanism?
Yeah, thank you, George. I think that's a very good idea also to collect some proposals. We have not fixed our next edition yet, but please also subscribe to our newsletter so that you all stay with us and stay informed. We want to establish this series. I think we had a great start. Also, thanks to you, Janis Brühl, for conducting this interview. I think it was really very insightful.
Thank you for having me.
It was a pleasure. Thanks to all in the audience for joining us today in this experiment. It's, as you can imagine, it's for us academics, it's not so easy to think about formats like this, but I think that went very well. We have, if you are also interested in our academic digital humanism lecture series, let me just mention that we have in 2 weeks Syed Choudhury from Carnegie Mellon Libraries with a talk entitled The Imperative of Openness in AI. So this is February 24th, so we always Tuesday at 5 p.m. And I think that was all I wanted to mention. I think we have not mentioned our now I'm maybe have to check myself. We have not mentioned our so to say our subtitle for Polis Digitalis yet, ensuring a democratic digital space. That's what is our aim, and with the help of all of you, I think we are all on a good track to this. I now have some problems with my screen. Here I am. Sorry for that. And I wish you all a nice evening. Thanks again for joining. See you next time. Bye bye.
Thank you. Have a good evening.
Have a good evening.
Thank you.
Ciao.